Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. It's been a while since the last installment of The Brutal Truth About Insert Character Here. And I'm not sure why I took a break on the series, but we're doing another one at last. And this time it's for our favorite magical sleeved boba man, Kamisato Ayato. Fun fact, Ayato is the first character since Yoimiya back in August to get his first ever rerun. That's right, we haven't had a first rerun of a featured 5-star character for about 4 months. And I tend to make these videos for a 5-star character's first rerun, and I guess I answered my question from earlier as to why I took a break from this series. Boba Ayato was released back on March 30th, 2022, so it'll be nearly 8 months once his rerun hits in the second half of patch 3.3. So as usual with these The Brutal Truth About Insert Character Here videos, here are 50-ish things to consider for Ayato's sweet rerun. But really quick, it's time to pay some bills. And today's sponsor is WWD World War Defense Battle. World War Defense Battle is an action-packed tug-of-war style defense game where you send waves of soldiers to annihilate your opponents. Inspired by retro-style 1990s arcade games, World War Defense Battle modernizes side-scrolling defense gameplay to both appeal to nostalgia and modern sensibilities. And unlike other tug-of-war style defense games where you can only send your troops and watch them do their thing, in World War Defense Battle you can control your main commander unit, which adds a lot of depth to the gameplay. Collect 20 different types of soldiers and strategize your victory with perfect deployment times and combinations. You will also craft tons of special goods and upgrades for your unstoppable army. But that's not all, your main commander has a bunch of epic upgrades and weapons as well to smash the crazy World War inspired mechanical behemoths of your enemies. So what are you waiting for? Smash that link down below to get started with WWD World War Defense Battle. Huge thanks to WWD World War Defense Battle for sponsoring today's video. Let's start off as we usually do by breaking down all the nuances of Ayato's kit, and everything I can think of for you to consider. Starting off with the easiest and by far the most inconsequential part of his kit, his normal attacks, Kamisato Art Marubashi. Let's be real here, Ayato's normal attacks are basically useless. They do physical damage, have low multipliers, and really that actually leads to the biggest pro about Ayato's normal attacks. You don't need to level them. Personally, I like it when characters have a useless skill in their kit, as it allows us to save resources. This of course doesn't take away from how fabulous Ayato looks while performing his normal attacks. Next, let's take a look at his elemental skill, Kamisato Art Kyoka. Kamisato Art Kyoka is the boba of Ayato's milk tea, and it's overall the most important part of his kit. His elemental skill has incredible frame data, and thus some great DPS as well. Without any attack speed, Ayato can slash 15 times during his elemental skill. His slashes also scale off both HP and attack, which makes HP rolls a little less painful on him. Although admittingly, especially at Constellation 0, much less of his damage output is from his HP than when he's at Constellation 2. But it's still nice to gain some damage through HP rolls. Ayato's elemental skill also only has a 12-second cooldown, which is short enough to align into literally any rotation. Speaking of duration, his infusion duration is only 6 seconds, which is pretty short. However, it's usually advantageous to compress your damage into a shorter time window than to extend it over a longer time window. And while he cannot switch during his Hydro Infusion, the 6-second duration is short enough to where you probably don't need to switch anyway. This does lead to 50% downtime since his cooldown is 12 seconds, but those 6 seconds of downtime tend to be the perfect amount of time for his teammates to do their stuff. Ayato also has standard ICD on his Namisen slashes, so he applies a good amount of Hydro as well. And quite amusingly, the hitbox on his Namisen slashes are comically large, hitting things in Venti's black hole. The slashes are very horizontal though, with very little extension to behind him, and this means that when Ayato rotates due to auto-targeting, he will miss things in his peripherals because of that auto-targeting. However, the auto-targeting also makes him a god of rotating around to hit things behind him after the thing in front of him dies. Overall though, they made his hitbox way larger than you'd expect. Ayato also has increased resistance to interruption, and while it's a very solid amount, it's not perfect super armor like Raiden's burst, so you will occasionally get knocked out of it. He generates 1 to 2 particles up to 3 times during his Namisen slashes, so this can be a pretty large variance in the amount of hydro particles he generates. His Namisen slashes do count as normal attacks and normal attack damage. Since they count as normal attacks and not other sources of damage like elemental skill damage or whatever, this makes both building his artifacts and teams much more flexible. He doesn't have the Raiden issue of not working with Beidou as an example. Lastly, Ayato's elemental skill does kind of root him in place, albeit he does move forward a bit and rotate really well, but this does lead to the opportunity cost of sacrificing a slash or two to reposition with his dashes. And perhaps most importantly, Ayato's elemental skill, being the bulk of his damage, means that he can be extremely productive even without his elemental burst, so he's not energy dependent. Oh yeah, he also has a clone thing that explodes or something, but honestly it's pretty hard to notice. As you can probably tell by now, Ayato's elemental skill is an incredible asset of his, although not nearly as valuable as his infinite boba sleeve. The last part of his kit to talk about is his elemental burst, Kamisato Art Suiyu. Ayato finally lets his foot off the gas pedal without spamming a ton of slashes and stuff for this part of his kit and slows things down a lot. Kamisato Art Suiyu has a 2-second casting animation which is tied for the longest in the entire game. It does last for a very long time, 18 entire seconds, however it only ticks twice per second. It has similar targeting mechanics to Ganyu's, cycling through 4 enemies, thus making it good against grouped up enemies. Sadly, against 1 or 2 targets though, it's not nearly as impressive and will frequently miss. Unlike his elemental skill which compresses all its damage in a short amount of time though, his elemental burst takes a very long time to output his damage. It does provide a 20% bonus damage buff to normal attacks which is nice, but in many situations it's not even worth using due to its very long casting animation. It snapshots buffs, and despite it having a very high 80 energy cost, Ayato does have a passive which helps mitigate it substantially, gaining him 2 energy per second while he's off field for up to 40 energy. The biggest issue with his burst is absolutely its long casting animation. It's still a solid and situationally powerful burst though. For example, it's great in freeze teams for its massive AoE hydro application, and freeze teams enjoy freezing enemies near each other, where Ayato's burst's cyclical targeting will put in some real work. It's also important for swirling hydro for Ayato if he doesn't have another hydro teammate. The next topic I always talk about in these The Brutal Truth About Insert Character Here is this character free-to-play friendly? In the case of Kami Boba Ayato, the answer is absolutely yes. Ayato, being a normal attack-based hydro character, actually has 4 entire artifact sets to choose from. He can use the Echoes of an Offering, the Gladiator's Finale, the Shimenawas, and the Heart of Depth. These are all great artifact choices for him. He can also make good use of many 5-star weapons, including his signature weapon, the Haran Gappaku of course, the Jade Cutter, the Mist Splitters, and even the Skyward Blade, thanks to its bonus attack speed helping him squeeze out a couple additional slashes. For light spenders that buy the Battle Pass, he is a great wielder of the Black Sword as well. Unfortunately, if you don't have any 5-star swords or the Black Sword, his completely free-to-play options aren't that great, with probably the Blackcliff Longsword being his best option. Nonetheless, even with the Blackcliff, Ayato is a stellar character, but not everything is perfect for Ayato from a free-to-play perspective. If you do save up for a signature weapon, the Haran Gappaku, sadly it's not nearly as universal as the Jade Cutter or the Mist Splitters were forged. And finally, his constellations do provide a substantial power gain, so free-to-plays are missing out on a good chunk of power through his constellations. And now it's time to cover some more, but very important, general talking points about Ayato. Ayato is the rare and extremely valuable on-field AoE Hydro main DPS character. This makes him incredible in the following teams: Boba National, Mono Hydro, Hyper Bloom, Virgin, Taser, Freeze, and more, I'm sure. Ayato is just ridiculously flexible thanks to how powerful and flexible Hydro is. Hydro got a very nice bump in free-to-play power thanks to the overwhelming power of Bloom-related reactions. However, if you notice something about those teams, Child is essentially a perfect one-to-one replacement for Ayato in those teams. Amazingly, Child and Ayato have a ton of overlap in their role, each with their comparative advantages and disadvantages. So if you already have Child and don't mind the slightly more complex gameplay, Ayato is far from necessary. Again though, Ayato is overall much easier to use than Child in my opinion, and they each have their own comparative advantages again. And another often overlooked but still important trait about Ayato is that without a second Hydro character, it can be difficult to swirl Hydro on the enemy, as you need to rely on his burst to do this, and this can lead to some awkward Hydro infusions or things like that you might not want. Finally, Constellation 6 Ayato is a great speedrunning character. However, if we're talking only about Constellation 0 speedruns, then I would say Child is better at that. So there you go, we finally got another first rerun of a character and thus another entry into the Brutal Truth about insert character here. Overall, it's really difficult to go wrong with Kamisato Ayato. He's a fun, rewarding, powerful, and easy to use character. Dare I say he's honestly one of the better or best characters, or at least certainly a top tier character in the game, especially for free to plays and at Constellation 0 and even for whales too at Constellation 6. Let me know what you think about Kamisato Ayato down in the comments below. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos ranging from Caesar showcases, DPS showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button, as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Win to Lose, signing out.